Hey folks, this is Rhykker, and we just had the Season 5 campfire chat for Diablo 4, and Season 5 is looking like it's gonna be sick. After an amazing Season 4, I was expecting Season 5 to be pretty small in scope, not as awesome in comparison, especially given that it's going to be a pretty short season. With Vessel of Hatred launching in October along with Season 6, that really just gives 2 months for Season 5. Season 5 is going to be starting on August 6th. So August 6th to October 8th. However, not only is Season 5 bringing a massive overhaul to unique items, some great quality of life features, it's also bringing a fully new endgame activity. We're going back to hell, we're fighting waves of monsters. After every wave, things are going to get harder. We're going to get to pick banes and boons, modifiers to make things more challenging, more rewarding. And at the end, we're going to have some unique boss fights, and then we're going to be able to select from a variety of rewards. We'll dive into everything here. First off, the PTR begins next week, next Tuesday. June 25th runs for 1 week, PC Battle.net only. So this new endgame mode, it's called the Infernal Hordes. It starts off in World Tier 3. This is coming to both Eternal and Seasonal, by the way. You're going to do a little quest line, and then you're going to start finding Infernal Compasses. These are the keys to access the Infernal Hordes mode. There's going to be 8 tiers of difficulty in total. Tiers 1 through 3 will drop as keys. Tier 1 is available as of World Tier 3. Tier 2 is World Tier 4, and Tier 3, gosh, tiers and tiers. Tier 3 keys are going to be available once you're level 100 in World Tier 4. The higher the tier, the higher the difficulty, the more modifiers, the more chances for more loot, and the more waves you have to fight. In Tier 1, you have 5 waves, and by Tier 8, you have 10 waves. It's estimated that by Tier 8, monsters are going to be roughly monster level 180 to 200, so that's capping out at roughly pit level 100. Now, we said only the first 3 tiers of keys drop. That's because you will also get something called Abyssal Scrolls. Abyssal Scrolls can be used to upgrade the tier of a key. So to go beyond Tier 3, you gotta get these scrolls to upgrade your key tiers. So once you're inside one of these Infernal Hordes, you follow the compass, you've gone there. Again, you're gonna fight waves of enemies. You have 90 seconds to take down a wave. Presumably, if you don't do it in 90 seconds, you fail. Then at the end of the wave, you're gonna have a choice of between 3 things. They each contain a boon and a bane. The banes do something to make the rest of your run, not just the next wave, but all subsequent waves, more challenging. An example of a bane might be that elites deal more damage. Another one would be that hellfire fireballs rain down upon you like you're in Helltide. Now, something that's not 100% clear to me, but it seems as though all the boons revolve around buffing the amount of something called ether that drops at the end of a run. At the end of a wave, and you collect this ether. It's essential towards your progress. I believe you need it to open the rewards chests at the very end of the run. I'm actually hoping that's not the only boons. It would be nice if the boons included a selection of things that make things easier, like buffing yourself, in addition to buffing the rewards at the end, right? Like, let's say your run is going poorly, right? It should be a risk reward thing where, okay, I'm greedy, so I'm going to go for better rewards, or oh crap, I'm getting close to dying, oh, here's something that's gonna like buff my resists, or whatever the case is. I think that would make things slightly more interesting if the choice is between greed and buffs. This whole mode is pseudo roguelite inspired, and I think leaning further into that would have been really cool. It could be as simple as giving you a shrine buff, like for the rest of the run. Anyway, after the final wave, you have the boss fight. And the boss fight's gonna be really cool because it's a return of some familiar faces from Diablo 2, the Council. Before you go fight Mephisto, you fight the Council, and a few of those guys are coming back. It looks like Blizzard Albany, formerly Vicarious Visions, had a lot to do with this season. They're the ones who did Diablo 2 Resurrected. They redid those council member models in D2R. Looks like they're redoing them now in D4. They look fantastic. They've remade 5 council members and updated them for Diablo 4. And when you go into the boss fight of Infernal Hordes, it's going to randomly select 3 of them. So every time you go into this mode, the final boss fight, you have basically 10 potential variations because it's randomly selecting 3 out of the 5. And they all have different sort of skill sets or toolkits, presumably, so it could result in some very varied fights. I really like the idea, actually, of I just think boss fights are more interesting when you have multiple bosses fighting you. So this is effectively what's happening here. And again, once they are defeated, then you have your choice of rewards. You have the ether you collected and you can open different reward chests. And so you'll have different chests with very specific rewards. For instance, here's a chest that's going to give you only legendaries and maybe uniques. Here's a chest that'll give you only gold. They said that's going to be a good source of gold. Here's a chest with crafting mats, including masterworking mats that you could previously only get in the pit. Here's a chest that will guarantee an item with at least one greater affix. So I really like this idea of being able to customize what we get as a reward. So that about covers the new endgame activity. Really hyped to try that out when PTR launches, but there's also a bunch of new stuff as well. There's going to be a bunch of new unique items. And in fact, there's going to be a bunch of new unique items that are farmed specifically within the Infernal Hordes mode, or at least target farm. They can drop anywhere, but if you want to target farm them, you want to go into the Infernal Hordes. There's 10 uniques in total and 20 legendary aspects as well that can all be target farmed within the Infernal Hordes. This is a first for legendary aspects being able to be target farmed in a specific activity. But overall on Season 5, we're getting over 50 new unique items and legendary powers. This is the biggest number that we've gotten in any season yet. And this is because they're doing a huge rework to uniques. Uniques have not been in a great spot ever since Season 4. Season 4, great update, great overhaul to itemization, tempering, very powerful, and made uniques relatively weak. And in general, on the average build now uses between 0 and 2 uniques. And it seems what the dev team wants is for every build to use between 2 and 4 uniques. So they're really going to be ramping up the power of uniques. They're not allowing you to temper uniques. What they like is the idea that players build their legendaries, players build around their uniques. A legendary is an item that once it drops, you don't yet know whether it's going to be your best in slot because you first got to craft a bunch on it, and then you can be like, ah, yes, this is good, or, you know, this is a brick and it's garbage. Whereas with a unique, they want it that as soon as it drops and you look at it, you know, yes, this is it, this is perfect. Also, henceforth, Uber Uniques are going to be officially known as Mythic Uniques, and they are getting their own special color beam. It's going to be purple. They have their own little purple border color, and they have their own unique drop sound now. You can also now target farm uniques and Mythic Uniques from Obol vendors, from Helltide chests, and from Whisper caches. You previously could not get these from these sources. One thing that's unclear, it looks like they said this is only for armor and weapons, that it won't work for other slots. And it seems that every source of drops just has a flat percentage chance to drop a Mythic Unique. And if you roll that chance, then even if you cannot normally get a Mythic Unique in that slot, you're going to get another random Mythic Unique. As an example, because that was confusing, let's say you're in Helltide and you open a gloves cache, a gloves chest. If it rolls the percentage to drop a Mythic Unique, well, there are no Mythic Unique gloves. So instead, it's going to just randomly give you any Mythic Unique. I don't think you'll be unhappy that you didn't get gloves. Now, in order to buff uniques, what they're basically doing is they're taking the unique modifiers and they're increasing the maximum possible roll. So they're making it that there's a much wider range that it can roll on, but if you get one of those max rolls, that's going to be an absolute baller item. And while they're not letting you temper upon uniques, they are going to look at a bunch of tempering affixes and start adding them to uniques where appropriate. So basically they're going to try to guess, you know, would someone want to add a tempering affix onto this? Well, let's just put it onto it, like multiple projectiles, for instance. They'll also potentially give you tempering affixes that cannot normally roll on that item slot. Again, uniques are meant to be items that can break the rules. Now, uniques come with a number of affixes. Some of them are just kind of like generic affixes, but some really fit the theme of the unique. And for those affixes that really fit the theme of the unique, they're going to buff those numbers up significantly. Much more than a stack could normally roll. So hopefully with all these buffs, we're going to see uniques come back into play in Season 5. After that, they went through some class changes, balance changes, and such. First off, they are changing the way invulnerability skills work. The cooldown for invulnerability skills is now going to start once the invulnerability ends as opposed to when it starts. This is to prevent you from being able to maintain 100% uptime on invulnerability powers. We had the same thing happen in Diablo 3. The lesson was learned in Diablo 3. The change was made about a year into the life of Diablo 3. Apparently we had to learn that same lesson again in Diablo 4, and now this has been implemented, and now RIP Sorcerer. They're also generally reducing the amount of crowd control that monsters will do, both in terms of frequency and the duration of the crowd control, and they're now going to allow us to use our potions while we are CC'd. Because of some bug fixes, we're getting a nerf to rogues and to the necromancers. The rogue victimize passive won't be double dipping on damage anymore. That's going to be a general nerf to any rogue build that uses victimize. For the necromancer, the skeletal reapers had some bug where they were benefiting from one of the Book of the Dead bonuses even when it wasn't selected, so that's being fixed. All the classes are getting some love in some way. For rogues, Flurry Rogue is going to be on the rise. We're seeing some interesting buffs to Flurry. Flurry might become an S tier build for Rogue now. For Druid, interesting change, they are changing the Shepherd aspect. The Shepherd aspect was an aspect where the more pets you have out, the more buffed you are. This resulted in this weird kind of build playstyle where you're not a pet build, you're a pet build that just stacks pets to buff yourself. So now they're doing it that the Shepherd staff, the Shepherd aspect will buff pets instead. And in order to compensate for that power loss, they're just buffing a bunch of Druid skills. This is so that the Shepherd aspect is not going to feel as required for Druid builds anymore. Then Sorcerer is getting this new Chain Lightning unique item. Adam Jackson seemed really excited for it. It's great to see when the devs seem really like excited and like geeking out over something in the game. It's clear when they play the game and they enjoy it and they're really hype about having fun with something in the game. This unique completely changes how Chain Lightning works in a really cool way. And then for Necromancer, I know we didn't talk about Barbarian. Barbarian's getting something, whatever. Barbs are always eating well. For the Necromancer, the Golem, now when you manually activate the Golem's power and target an enemy, instead of him, jogging on over at a leisurely pace, he now Hulk slams over to the enemy instantly. Doesn't matter which Golem, they all do it. Outside of that, we're getting a bunch of quality of life updates. So Whispers and Helltides. The goal was always for Whispers to take like 15 minutes to do. How it's working in Season 4, they see that it's taken players about 30 to 35 minutes to do all the Whispers. So what they're doing is they're really consolidating Whispers. They're putting like a cluster of 10 Whispers in one Helltide zone instead of spreading them out so much. What they're seeing now is it's probably going to take us about 15 minutes to do the wave of Whispers, and then we can, be done. Within Helltide, the drop rate of Baneful Hearts is going down. And they just feel that it was too high. We were swimming in these hearts. They don't want to starve us of them, but they want them to still feel significant. Now, okay, the one thing that's going to probably make a lot of people unhappy, no big changes coming to tempering. They do want breaking to be possible. However, they understand the frustration that we have in the amount of RNG that is involved in tempering, and they want to find ways to let us be able to better control that RNG. But that's more for future seasons. However, something that will not be in PTR but will be in for Season 5 launch, they're going to make it so that if an item has a greater aspect on it, for every greater aspect, you're going to have 2 additional tempering attempts. Greater affix, sorry. And again, probably more updates to tempering in the future, but that seems like a Season 6 thing. Now, across the board on weapons, they've done a pass and redone the innate affixes, the implicit affixes on weapons, making them more generally useful and in line with the Season 4 atomization update. And they have also, this is pretty massive, they have allowed more classes to use more weapon types. And this over here should read that Necros can now use maces and axes, not swords and axes. And this also extends to Uber Uniques, so Necromancers can use the Butcher's Cleaver, Sorcerers can use Azarath and Doombringer. Also, for the Beast in Ice, you no longer need to make a sigil to summon him. They've removed that whole pre-dungeon you gotta do to fight him. For Varshan, you don't need 4 materials to summon him anymore. You just need 1 material. It's been consolidated down. And the most welcome change of them all, after you kill one of these Uber bosses, the altar will now reappear. You don't have to reset the dungeon. You can just resummon the Uber boss. During the Q&A, they also suggested that they are aware that some people don't quite like how in pit runs, if you are not the party leader who put in the pit material, you only get 50% of the rewards at the end. They might make some adjustments to that in the future. Nothing to announce right now. Armory / build saving / loadout, all that stuff. They're very aware that people have been asking this forever. They just said it takes really long to implement this. And they said they have no plans to add an auction house in-game. And they reminded us that their next campfire will be July 18th. That's going to be the reveal of the Spiritborn. So I'm quite hyped for Season 5. This is way more than I expected. Again, I was expecting a very small season. I wasn't expecting an entire new game mode. I really hope, I can't wait to try it out. I'm really hoping this is going to be the very replayable game mode that I've been looking for. Lots of great quality of life stuff. Game keeps getting better. To me, this is a big W, but what about you folks? What are your thoughts on Season 5 so far? Sound off in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Special thanks to my supporters, and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.